My husband patted my back and said, "The only reason you're a talent scout is because you're talentless." It hurt. My husband knew I'd wanted to be a singer, but after years of my family telling me that my voice was like a cat being dragged up the highway, I gave up. Instead, I became a talent scout hoping to help others live out their dreams. But it's been a struggle lately. The last 3 artists I'd brought to the agency had either fizzled out or voluntarily left to focus on other things. While I spent 18 months crawling from place to place looking for the next big star, my boss constantly called me to his office asking for progress. "Look, I like you. You're passionate and driven. But that won't cut it anymore. This is your last month." It was heartbreaking. And even worse, when I told my husband Duncan all about the problem, he just shrugged. "Perfect. Maybe then you can finally quit and just be the perfect housewife." When I said I didn't want to be a housewife, he sighed and looked at me like I was being silly. "Honey, you make less than a waitress. At this point, we'd probably make more money selling pictures of your feet." He laughed. I frowned. I hated whenever he made jokes like that. But honestly, I started wondering if he was right. Maybe this wasn't just some slump. This was the end of a dream. But then it happened. Just as I was taking a break from scouting, I found my diamond in the rough on stage at a tiny black box theater. I watched an actor walk up to a mic and absolutely crush it on stage. The 3 people in the audience, including me, we just couldn't take our eyes off him. He had it all. The presence, the raw emotion, a voice that commanded the empty room like it was a packed house. After the show, I ran up to him instantly, handing him my business card. At first, he pushed it away, saying it was just a hobby. "You're too talented to box yourself in like this. I mean, can you imagine standing there in a crowd of 100 people all waiting for your performance? I can guarantee I'll bring you there." The guy, Nicholas, stared at the card. "You've convinced me. I'll call you," he said, slipping the card in his pocket. I was excited. When I got home, I gushed about it all to my husband, Duncan. "This is it," I grinned. But instead of being supportive, Duncan sighed and gave me a condescending smile. "Look, I don't want you getting your hopes up over nothing, but honestly, you've never really been a good talent scout. And it's sad since the only reason you're even a talent scout and not an actual celebrity is because you're talentless. And that's okay. I still love you. But honey, don't you think it's time to think about a more stable career instead?" Normally I'd take the hurt and put it away for another day. But this time it hit me hard. I looked at the man I'd spent 6 years with and saw him clearly for the first time. "You're absolutely right. I should focus on my career," I said calmly. That night I made 2 decisions. I left Duncan and bet everything I had on Nicholas. I moved out immediately and crashed on my friend's couch in her studio apartment. For 4 weeks, I watched my savings drain away. Nicholas's first 2 big auditions led nowhere. No callbacks? Nothing. I was down to my last dollars, eating ramen every night, taking random freelance gigs just to cover the costs of his acting coach. But then Nicholas landed a supporting role for an independent film. A small party for a movie with a tiny budget. But the result instantly skyrocketed Nicholas towards stardom. The film received major praise. His performance got incredible reviews from critics, and suddenly my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Casting directors wanted to meet him. Within months, he'd booked 3 commercials and a lead role in a streaming series. My commission check from that one deal ended up being more than my ex-husband Duncan made in a single year. I used it to get my own apartment and pay off every cent of debt I had. Over the next year, I signed 3 more actors off the momentum from Nicholas's success. He won Best Actor at an international film festival. Meanwhile, I heard through friends that Duncan was falling apart. Apparently, he'd been secretly taking creative and marketing strategies based on my knowledge of the entertainment industry. So without me around, the quality of his work started flopping on him. He got passed over for promotions and became a laughingstock in the office. The same week Nicholas won his award, Duncan was put on a performance improvement plan. Friends stopped inviting him to places after hearing what he'd said to me. Nicholas and I had gotten close during all of this. He'd take me to dinner after long days, make me laugh, and remind me why I loved this industry. Somewhere along the way, it had shifted from professional to something more than friends, but things didn't stop there. Nicholas heard about my dream as a singer, and about how my ex-husband called me talentless, and encouraged me to challenge it. "You have the talent, and you know this industry. What's stopping you?" He dragged me into a studio session and collaborated on a track together. When it released, it immediately caught attention. Critics praised my vocals and lyrics. And now, on the first night of my concert, I saw my ex in the front row of the crowd. I gripped the set list so hard the paper crumples at the edges while my eyes bounce between the clock on the wall and the monitor showing people finding their seats. Duncan walked in 7 minutes ago and claimed a spot dead center in the front row. My hands shake and I force them still against my thighs. This was supposed to feel like winning, like finally proving everyone wrong about my voice being worthless. Instead, my chest feels tight and my throat keeps closing up like my body wants to protect me from making a fool of myself. I count breaths the way Isabel drilled into me during our last session, pulling air in for 4 beats and pushing it out for 6. Nicholas knocks twice before opening my dressing room door. He hands me a bottle of water and gives me that calm smile that usually makes everything feel manageable. He reminds me I've run through this set more times than I can count, and my voice has never been stronger than it is right now. His steady presence cuts through the panic just enough that I remember why I'm standing backstage at all. This isn't about Duncan. This is about finally claiming the thing I gave up on years ago, when my family convinced me I sounded like roadkill. Caspian appears in the doorway next and mentions the photographers outside who'll be looking for shots of me and Nicholas together. He says it gently, but I know what he means. Nicholas was technically my client until 3 weeks ago, and people love to speculate about whether we crossed professional lines. I snap back that I'm aware of how it looks, and then immediately apologize because he's just doing his job. He nods and suggests Nicholas stay backstage during the encore to keep things clean. My phone buzzes on the makeup table and I grab it to see an email from Delilah's office. The subject line reads, "Commission Dispute Resolution," and my stomach drops before I even open it. She's claiming she deserves a cut of Nicholas's indie film money because the agency provided resources during his early auditions. I curse under my breath and want to throw my phone across the room. The timing feels calculated, like she knew exactly when to throw me off balance. I forward the whole thing to my lawyer contact and silence my phone completely. I stare at my reflection in the mirror, surrounded by those harsh white bulbs, and force myself to ask the hard question. Why does this moment actually matter beyond shoving my success in Duncan's face? The answer takes a minute to form, but when it does, it feels clear. I need to claim my own voice. Not as revenge, but because this is what I should have done 10 years ago before I let other people's opinions bury my dreams. This performance is about believing I deserve to be heard, not about proving Duncan was wrong to call me talentless. The monitor catches my eye again, and I see Duncan's face perfectly clear in the front row. Suddenly, I'm back in our kitchen listening to him tell me I'd never make it as anything but a housewife. The hurt flashes through me hot and immediate like it just happened yesterday. But then I remember every single hour I spent in the studio with Dwayne. Every note Isabel pushed me to hit. Every morning I woke up choosing this path even when my bank account said I couldn't afford it. I let the anger transform into something useful, instead of letting it poison me from the inside. The stage manager sticks his head in and calls 10 minutes. I gather my band and Dwayne in a quick huddle to confirm the set order one last time. We establish a hand signal I can use if my nerves spike mid-song, just touching my ear twice if I need an extra breath between verses. They built flexibility into the arrangement specifically for moments like this. Knowing I have that safety net helps me breathe a little easier, even though my heart still pounds against my ribs. I walk toward the stage entrance and the lights hit me so hard they wash out individual faces in the crowd. But I still know exactly where the front row is, exactly where Duncan sits with his phone probably ready to record everything. My legs feel shaky, but I keep moving forward anyway. I reach for the mic stand like it's the only solid thing in the room. The crowd noise swells and gets louder as I step into the light. I let that sound carry me the last few steps to center stage. The opening verse comes out tighter than I wanted, and I can feel my hand trembling where it grips the metal mic stand. Instead of trying to hide the shake, I acknowledge it and let my voice ride that nervous energy rather than fighting against it. The authenticity of that choice steadies me more than trying to sound perfect ever could. I'm halfway through the first song when I glance toward the front row and see Duncan holding up his phone, clearly recording my performance. Irritation spikes sharp and immediate, but I make a conscious choice not to engage with him. I'm not performing for him, and I'm not performing against him either. I redirect my focus to the people in the back rows who actually paid money to hear me sing, who came here because they wanted to, not because they're trying to gather evidence of my failure. The first song ends and I let the last note hang in the air before the applause starts rolling through the venue. I take a breath and step closer to the mic. The lights feel hot on my face, but I push through the nerves. I tell the crowd about how I used to think my dreams were over, how someone close to me said I wasn't good enough, how I almost believed it. I keep the details vague, but the emotion stays real. The room goes completely quiet in a way that feels different from polite listening. Several people in the middle rows nod like they've been exactly where I'm standing. A woman near the side wipes her eyes. I realize something shifted between me and these people. This isn't just a performance anymore. We're actually connecting over something real. The band starts the intro to the second song and I grip the mic stand tighter. This track is personal. I wrote most of the lyrics on my friend's couch after leaving my marriage. The first verse builds steady and controlled. Then I reach the chorus lyric about walking away from someone who made you feel small, who convinced you that you'd never amount to anything. The entire room seems to hold its breath. I feel complete ownership of this story, of my right to tell it through music. The validation doesn't come from Duncan watching me succeed. It comes from me finally believing I earned this moment through every hour I spent training my voice and fighting my own doubts. The song ends and the applause crashes over me like a wave. The band launches into an instrumental section and I slip off stage for a quick break. Caspian rushes over with his phone in his hand. His face looks tense. He tells me Duncan's presence is already blowing up on social media with people posting photos and speculating about our history. Annoyance flares hot in my chest, but I force myself to stay calm instead of reactive. Getting mad right now won't help anything. I tell Caspian we'll deal with it after the show. He nods and I focus on getting back on stage for the encore. My hands still shake a little, but I breathe through it. Backstage, I make a split-second decision. Nicholas was supposed to join me for the encore. We wrote a duet together and planned to perform it tonight, but keeping him off stage feels like the right call now. This moment needs to be mine alone, not shared or complicated by our relationship or the speculation already spreading online. I signal to the band that I'm doing the encore solo. They adjust the arrangement on the fly. Nicholas catches my eye from the wings and nods like he understands. Relief washes through me. The encore lands clean and confident. I don't look toward the front row even once. I keep my eyes on the balcony where people are standing and swaying. I watch the folks dancing near the bar. I make eye contact with my drummer who's been with me since the first rehearsal. When the final note fades, I feel genuinely proud instead of vindicated. That somehow feels more powerful than any revenge fantasy I used to imagine. The crowd cheers and I take a bow. The stage lights dim and I walk off feeling lighter than I have in months. After the show, I head toward my dressing room but spot Duncan lingering near the exit. He's trying to catch my attention. I feel that old pull to confront him, to throw my success in his face and make him admit he was wrong about me. But I recognize that impulse as old programming from when I still cared what he thought. Instead, I motion to security and tell them to maintain a clear boundary. They nod and position themselves between us. I follow the process my lawyer and I established months ago. Any contact with Duncan goes through proper channels. No exceptions. Backstage, Nicholas pulls me into a quick hug. He tells me the performance was incredible and that I owned every second of it. His arms feel warm and steady. We both feel the pull towards something more romantic in this moment. But we agreed earlier not to be photographed together tonight. The professional restraint feels responsible even though part of me wants to stop caring what people think. We pull apart and he squeezes my hand once before heading out the back exit. I watch him go and feel grateful he understands why this matters. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I pull it out and see a text from Duncan. He says he wants to talk and congratulate me properly. My thumb hovers over the reply button. A dozen sarcastic responses run through my head. Instead, I open my contacts and find the mediator's information. I send Duncan a simple message routing him to Autumn. All communication goes through proper channels. I delete the sarcastic draft I almost sent and stick to the boundary. My hand shakes a little as I put the phone away, but I feel proud of myself for not engaging. The next morning, I wake up in my apartment and check my email before I even get out of bed. There's a message from Delilah's office with a detailed breakdown of commission claims on Nicholas's indie film deal. The numbers look inflated. She's claiming percentages on deals that happened after I'd already left the agency. The timing still feels manipulative coming right after my successful concert. Frustration bubbles up in my chest. But I force myself to channel it into organized action instead of angry responses. I forward everything to my lawyer contact and start building my counter-argument. I open a spreadsheet and begin documenting every contract date and payment timeline. The work feels tedious but necessary. I schedule a call with Autumn to move forward with the divorce mediation. It's time to stop putting this off. I start creating a checklist of shared assets and debts. The condo we bought together. The car loan in both our names. The credit card debt from when I was between jobs. Seeing it all laid out makes my stomach tighten. The process feels overwhelming when I look at the full scope, but having a clear structure makes it manageable. I remind myself that organized action beats emotional reaction every single time. I add items to the list methodically. Bank accounts, furniture, the wedding gifts we never returned. Each line represents a piece of my old life that I'm finally ready to divide up and move past. That afternoon, I meet Caspian at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. He has his laptop open and shows me the social media chatter about the concert. Most comments focus on the music and my performance, but a solid chunk of people are talking about Duncan being there and what it means. Caspian scrolls through screenshots of speculation about whether we're getting back together or if I staged the whole thing for publicity. I feel my jaw tighten reading the theories people are spinning. Caspian suggests we get ahead of it with a simple post that thanks everyone who came and celebrates the music without feeding into the drama. We spend 20 minutes drafting something short and clean. It thanks the audience for an amazing first show and says how grateful I am to share my music with people who showed up to listen. No mention of Duncan, no address of the rumors, just forward momentum focused on the work itself. Caspian reads it back to me twice and I approve it. He schedules it to go live in an hour. The whole approach feels smarter than ignoring everything or getting defensive. I leave the coffee shop feeling like I handled something professionally instead of emotionally. 2 weeks later, I'm in the studio with Dwayne working on tracks for the EP. We're listening back to a vocal take I recorded yesterday, and he wants to keep it as is. I think it sounds rough in places where my voice cracks slightly on a high note. Dwayne leans back in his chair and tells me the imperfections make it sound real and human. I argue that people expect a certain level of polish, and I don't want to sound like an amateur who can't hit her notes cleanly. He plays the section again and points out how the slight break in my voice actually adds feeling to the lyric about being afraid to try something new. I sit there listening and realize my insecurity is doing the talking. I'm worried people will hear that crack and think I'm not good enough. But Dwayne's right that the raw moment captures something genuine. I take a breath and tell him we're keeping the raw version. This is who I actually am as an artist, not some perfect image. The decision feels scary, but honest. 3 days later, I'm scrolling through my phone during lunch when I see a music review of my concert posted by a critic I actually respect. The headline praises my authentic performance style and emotional delivery. I feel a rush of pride reading the first few paragraphs. Then I get to the section where the critic questions the ethics of my relationship with Nicholas given our professional history. The review asks whether I gave him special treatment as his agent, and whether our personal connection creates problems for both our reputations. My stomach drops reading it. The criticism stings because it touches on doubts I've had myself. I put my phone down and stare at the wall for a while. The questions are fair even if I don't like them. I spend the rest of the afternoon thinking about whether Nicholas and I have actually handled this the right way. The professional lines got blurry, and maybe we should have been more careful about boundaries from the start. That evening, Nicholas comes over to my apartment and I bring up the review. I tell him we need to talk about reassigning him to another agent to eliminate any concerns about conflicts of interest. He immediately pushes back and says he trusts me and doesn't want to work with anyone else. I explain that protecting both our reputations matters more than keeping our professional relationship intact. If people question whether I gave him special treatment, it hurts his credibility as an actor and mine as an agent. Nicholas sits quiet for a minute, processing what I'm saying. Then he asks what happens to us personally if we separate our careers completely. I tell him that's exactly what needs to happen. Our personal relationship can develop naturally without the mess of business considerations. We agree to start looking at other agencies that would be a good fit for him. The conversation feels hard but necessary. I'm choosing integrity over convenience, even though it costs me a valuable client. The first mediation session with Duncan happens 4 days later in Autumn's office downtown. I arrive 10 minutes early and sit in the waiting area trying to steady my nerves. Duncan shows up right on time, looking uncomfortable in a button-down shirt he probably ironed that morning. Autumn brings us into a conference room and reviews the ground rules for mediation. She keeps her tone neutral and professional. Duncan immediately tries to steer the conversation toward feelings and what went wrong between us. He starts talking about how he misses certain things about our life together. I cut him off and redirect to the actual purpose of this meeting. We're here to discuss finances and timeline for finalizing the divorce. Autumn backs me up and guides us through dividing bank accounts and determining who keeps what furniture. Duncan keeps trying to insert emotional commentary, but I stay focused on the practical list. We get through about half the asset division before time runs out. I leave feeling shaky but proud that I maintained my boundaries and didn't let him pull me into his guilt trip. 2 days later, my phone rings with a call from Delilah. I almost don't answer, but curiosity wins out. She sounds tired when she starts talking. Delilah explains that her agency is facing serious money problems, and the commission dispute isn't personal. It's about survival. She breaks down the cash flow issues they're dealing with and admits she's been scrambling to keep things running. Her openness surprises me. I expected more of the aggressive business tactics she used in her last email. Instead, she's being vulnerable about how hard things have gotten. My anger shifts to something more complicated. I still think her commission claims are inflated, but I understand the desperation behind them now. We agree to move toward a numbers-based discussion instead of treating this like a personal fight. Delilah thanks me for listening and we hang up. I sit there feeling conflicted about the whole situation. Later that evening, I check my voicemail and see one from my mom. I play it while making dinner. She starts by saying congratulations on the concert and how proud she is. Then she adds comments about how much I've improved since my early singing days. The way she says it implies I used to be terrible. The backhanded compliment hits the same old wound. I put down the knife I'm using to chop vegetables and replay the message to make sure I heard it right. Yeah, that's definitely what she meant. I realize I need to set boundaries with my family the same way I'm doing with everyone else. I call her back and keep my voice calm but firm. I thank her for the congratulations but ask her to focus on supporting me now instead of bringing up past criticism. She sounds confused, like she doesn't understand why I'm upset. I explain that comments about how bad I used to be don't feel supportive even if she thinks she's complimenting my growth. We end the call on an awkward note, but I feel better for saying something. The next afternoon, Nicholas texts asking if he can stop by. When he arrives, he looks serious. He tells me he received an offer from a well-established agency with major industry connections. They want to sign him and have resources I can't match as an independent agent. He asks for my honest opinion about whether he should take it. Fear flashes through me at the thought of losing him as a client and the income that comes with it. But I force myself to look at the offer objectively. I read through the terms he shows me on his phone. The deal is genuinely better for his career. They can open doors I don't have access to. I take a breath and tell him he should take it. My integrity matters more than holding on to him professionally, even if it costs me money. Nicholas looks relieved that I'm not trying to talk him out of it. We agree this is the right move for both of us. 3 days later, I'm coordinating my schedule when I realize my rehearsal time overlaps with Nicholas's important table read across town. We're both overextended, and I'm tempted to skip rehearsal to support him. He texts suggesting he could leave the table read early to catch the end of my session. I stare at the messages and recognize we're falling into the same pattern of trying to do everything together. I text back that we both need to prioritize our separate work commitments. He agrees after a minute. The decision feels grown up, even though I'm disappointed we can't make it work. Sometimes being mature means accepting you can't do everything together. That night, I open my laptop and start drafting a formal policy about conflicts of interest for my talent roster. I want clear guidelines about personal relationships with clients so this situation never happens again. Writing it out feels defensive at first, like I'm trying to protect myself from criticism. But as I work through the specific rules and boundaries, I realize transparency is actually empowering. Having everything in writing protects everyone involved and shows I take professional ethics seriously. I finish the draft and save it to review again tomorrow. The document represents a commitment to doing things the right way, even when it's harder. 2 days later, I sit in Autumn's office for another mediation session, and Duncan arrives exactly on time carrying a folder of his own notes. Autumn starts by pulling up the shared property list, and immediately Duncan points at the coffee maker I bought last year with my first big commission check. He claims he uses it every morning and needs it for his routine while I argue that I paid for it with my own money, and he never even liked it until now. Autumn asks if we can compromise by having one person buy out the other's half, and Duncan scoffs like that's ridiculous for a kitchen appliance. I counter by saying I want the vintage record player his parents gave us as a wedding gift, and he immediately objects, saying it's a family heirloom that should stay with him. We go back and forth for 20 minutes until Autumn suggests we each keep one item without further argument, and we both reluctantly agree because neither of us wants to drag this out longer. Duncan takes the coffee maker and I take the record player, and it feels petty and irritating, but at least we're moving through the list like adults handling a business deal. Next comes the credit card debt we accumulated during our marriage, and Autumn presents a split that accounts for who used which cards more frequently. Duncan tries to claim I spent more on personal items, but I pull up bank statements showing his golf membership and car payments took up way more of our joint funds. We settle on a 60-40 split with him taking the larger share, and he looks annoyed but signs off on it anyway. The whole session feels mechanical and transactional, like we're dividing up assets from a failed business partnership, instead of a marriage that lasted 6 years. When we finish, Autumn schedules our next session for 2 weeks out to tackle retirement accounts, and I leave feeling drained but relieved we're making actual progress. The next morning, I wake up to 17 missed calls from Caspian, and a dozen texts telling me to check social media immediately. I open my phone and see a gossip account has posted a thread claiming I gave Nicholas special treatment in casting recommendations because we were dating while he was still my client. The post includes screenshots of casting notices with Nicholas's name and timestamps that make it look like I pushed him for roles he wasn't qualified for. Panic shoots through me because this could destroy both our reputations, and I immediately call Caspian, who tells me to get to his office right now with any documentation I have. I grab my laptop and drive over, still in my pajamas, and when I arrive, Caspian already has a spreadsheet open tracking every audition Nicholas attended under my representation. We spend 3 hours pulling up audition notes, callback decisions, and feedback emails from casting directors that show every role Nicholas got was based purely on his talent and performance. I find the original casting notices proving the screenshots were edited to change dates and make it look worse than it was. Caspian contacts the gossip account demanding they remove the false information and threatens legal action if they don't comply within 24 hours. We compile everything into a detailed response document with receipts showing our entire professional process was above board and merit-based. By the time we finish, I feel exhausted but confident because the facts speak for themselves, and anyone who actually looks at the evidence will see the rumors are garbage. Caspian posts a statement on my social media with links to the documentation, and within hours the gossip account deletes their thread and posts a retraction. The whole experience leaves me shaken, but also more certain that maintaining clear boundaries and proper documentation was the right choice all along. 3 days later, a producer I met at a networking event calls asking if I want to collaborate on a featured track for another artist's album. The artist is someone with a decent following, and the producer thinks my vocal style would complement their sound perfectly. I'm excited about the opportunity, but before agreeing, I ask about creative control and what happens if I don't like the final mix. The producer tries to brush it off, saying they'll make sure I'm happy with it, but I push back, asking for specific veto power over any mixes that include my vocals. He pauses like he wasn't expecting me to negotiate and suggests we do a trial recording session first to see if our styles mesh. I agree, but insist on contract language that gives me approval rights before anything gets released, and he finally agrees to send over terms for my review. The conversation feels empowering because I'm advocating for myself from a place of clarity instead of just being grateful someone wants to work with me. I'm learning that my contribution has value, and I deserve appropriate control over how my voice gets used. When the contract arrives 2 days later, I review it carefully with Caspian, and we add specific clauses about final approval and credit attribution. The producer accepts the changes, and we schedule the recording session for next month. I hang up feeling proud that I stood up for myself instead of just accepting whatever terms were offered. That same week, Delilah sends over a formal proposal for the commission dispute, suggesting a 3-year tail, where she gets a percentage of Nicholas's earnings from projects that originated during his time under my representation. I read through it carefully and realized 3 years is way too long, considering most of his current success came from work he booked after leaving the agency. I draft a counter-proposal suggesting an 18-month tail with clearer audit rights, so I can verify the calculations are accurate. Delilah calls me directly, instead of going through lawyers, and explains that her agency is struggling financially, and she needs this income to keep things running. Her honesty surprises me because she's usually all business, and I realize this isn't just about being difficult, but about actual survival. I tell her I understand her situation, but I still need to protect my own interests, and the 18-month timeline is fair given the circumstances. We go back and forth for 30 minutes discussing different scenarios and payment structures until we land on a compromise that gives her a slightly higher percentage for the first year and then steps down over the remaining 6 months. The negotiation feels less adversarial now that I understand what's really driving her position, but I don't let empathy override my need to advocate for myself. We agree to have our lawyers finalize the terms, and I hang up feeling like we're moving toward a solution that acknowledges both our needs without either of us getting completely steamrolled. 2 weeks later, I'm supposed to fly out for my first small out-of-town show in a city 3 hours away by plane. I get to the airport with plenty of time, but the departure board shows my flight is delayed by 2 hours due to mechanical issues. I try to stay calm, but the delay means I'll miss soundcheck completely and barely make it to the venue in time for the actual performance. I call the venue manager to explain the situation, and he sounds annoyed but says they'll have the band ready to go whenever I arrive. The flight finally boards 3 hours late, and I spend the entire time reviewing my set list on my phone and trying not to spiral into anxiety about performing without proper preparation. When I land, I grab my bag and rush to get a rideshare straight to the venue, arriving 40 minutes before showtime. The band is already set up, and I do a quick mic check, but there's no time to run through anything or adjust the sound levels properly. I feel frazzled and underprepared walking into the dressing room to change, but I force myself to focus on trusting my rehearsal preparation to carry me through. The whole experience tests my ability to stay composed under pressure, and I realize flexibility matters more than perfect conditions. During the show, everything seems to be going smoothly until halfway through my third song when my mic suddenly cuts out completely. I keep singing for a few seconds before realizing the audience can't hear me, and I stop mid-verse feeling panic start to rise. The sound tech is scrambling at the board trying to fix whatever went wrong, and I'm standing there in silence with 300 people staring at me waiting to see what happens next. Instead of freezing, I make eye contact with the guitarist and signal for him to keep playing while I grab the backup mic from the stand at the edge of the stage. I walk back to center and acknowledge the glitch, directly telling the crowd we're going to pivot to an acoustic version of the next song while the tech fixes the main system. The audience responds with supportive applause, and I launch into a stripped-down version with just guitar accompaniment that feels more intimate than the full band arrangement. By the time we finish the song, the main mic is working again, and I transition back into the regular set without missing another beat. The moment that could have been embarrassing becomes a connection point instead, and several people come up after the show specifically mentioning how much they loved the acoustic pivot. I leave the venue feeling proud that I handled the crisis with resourcefulness, instead of letting it derail the entire performance. The next morning, I check my email and see a message from Duncan with the subject line saying he wants to apologize. My first instinct is to open it and read what he has to say, but I stop myself and forward the entire thing to Autumn without reading past the first line. Part of me feels vindicated that he's finally acknowledging how badly he treated me in my career, but I maintain my boundary of not engaging with him directly. I text Autumn asking her to review it and let me know if there's anything I actually need to respond to, and she replies an hour later saying it's mostly personal reflection that doesn't require any action from me. She suggests I continue routing all communication through her to maintain the professional distance we've established. I feel tempted to read the full email just to know what he said, but I resist because steady adherence to the process matters more than emotional satisfaction. Later that day, I'm talking to Nicholas and mention the email, and he asks if I'm curious about what Duncan wrote. I admit I am, but that giving in to that curiosity would undermine all the boundaries I've worked so hard to establish. Nicholas nods and says he's proud of me for staying disciplined even when it's hard, and his support reminds me why maintaining these boundaries is worth the effort. 3 days later, Nicholas calls to tell me he's officially accepting representation from the new agency and asks me to help him complete the referral paperwork to make everything official. I feel a sharp pang of sadness knowing this means our professional relationship is completely over, but I remind myself this is the ethical thing to do. We meet at a coffee shop and I walk him through the paperwork explaining what each section means and making sure he understands the terms of his new contract. He thanks me multiple times for launching his career and says he wouldn't be where he is without my belief in him from the beginning. I tell him I'm genuinely proud of everything he's accomplished and that protecting both our reputations matters more than holding on to the professional connection. When we finish the paperwork, I submit it to the new agency and send confirmation to my own records. The moment feels bittersweet because I'm losing a significant source of income, but relief washes over me knowing we've done the right thing, even when it cost us both something. Nicholas reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, telling me we're going to figure out how to make our personal relationship work without the professional complications. I squeeze back and feel grateful that we're prioritizing integrity over convenience. The following week, I sit down to review my budget and realize my income is taking a noticeable dip now that Nicholas's commissions are going to another agent. I had been counting on that steady revenue stream to upgrade my recording equipment, and now I need to postpone those purchases indefinitely. The financial anxiety feels real as I look at my reduced projections, but I practice discipline instead of panic, reminding myself that integrity has costs. I revise my budget, cutting back on non-essential expenses, and start brainstorming other revenue streams I can build. I reach out to 2 other potential clients I'd been putting off and schedule meetings to discuss representation. I also contact the producer about additional collaboration opportunities that could bring in extra income. The adjustment period feels uncomfortable, but I focus on taking concrete action rather than spiraling into worry about money. By the end of the week, I have 3 new meetings scheduled and a clearer plan for diversifying my income sources. The experience teaches me that doing the right thing sometimes means accepting short-term financial pain for long-term stability and reputation. Saturday morning, I meet Whitney at our usual coffee shop just to decompress from all the professional stress that's been piling up. She immediately notices I look tired and asks how everything is going with the divorce and career stuff. I give her a quick summary of the mediation sessions, the PR crisis, and losing Nicholas as a client, and she listens without interrupting or trying to fix anything. When I finish, she shares her own good news about getting a promotion at work that comes with a significant raise and more responsibility. I feel genuinely happy for her and ask questions about her new role and what the promotion means for her career trajectory. Listening to her success reminds me that life exists beyond my own struggles, and that friendship means celebrating each other's wins even when you're going through tough times yourself. We spend the next hour talking about her plans and dreams, and I leave feeling supported instead of isolated. The conversation shifts my perspective from being consumed by my own problems to remembering I'm part of a network of people who care about each other. I text her later thanking her for the coffee and telling her I'm grateful for relationships that aren't transactional or based on what we can do for each other professionally. A few days later, I sit in Autumn's office watching her slide a thick folder across the conference table toward me. She walks through the final mediation terms page by page, her voice steady and professional as she explains the equitable split of assets. No alimony for either party. We each keep our separate retirement accounts. Duncan gets the car, I get the savings account we'd built together. My stomach twists as I look at the documents because signing them makes everything so final. But the terms are fair and honestly it's time to move forward. I pick up the pen and start initialing each page, my hand moving automatically while my brain tries to catch up with what I'm actually doing. Acceptance settles over me slowly as I work through the stack. This is happening. This is real. When I finish the last page, I slide the folder back to Autumn and she nods with what looks like approval. Duncan will sign his copy tomorrow, and then we're done. The following week, Caspian and I spread tour planning documents across my kitchen table and start mapping out a short regional circuit. He pulls up a spreadsheet showing 5 cities within driving distance, each venue holding between 200 and 400 people. We spend 3 hours working through clear ticketing policies and refund procedures in case anything goes wrong. After the chaos of my first concert and all the PR issues that followed, this cautious approach feels necessary. Caspian suggests we build in buffer days between shows in case I need vocal rest or equipment problems arise. I agree immediately because planning ahead feels empowering rather than negative. We create contingency plans for weather delays, technical failures, and health emergencies. By the end of the afternoon, I feel more confident about this tour than I did about my debut show. Having systems in place protects everyone involved and shows I'm learning from past mistakes. 2 days later, I sit across from a journalist in a small cafe doing my first major interview since the divorce became public knowledge. The conversation starts friendly enough as we discuss my music and creative process. Then she leans forward with that look journalists get when they're about to ask something they know will make you uncomfortable. She brings up Duncan's comment about me being talentless and asks if I want to elaborate on the drama surrounding our separation. My first instinct is to vent everything I've held back for months. I want to tell her about every condescending comment, every time he made me feel small, every moment he chose his ego over supporting me. But I stop myself and take a breath. Gossiping about my ex won't help my career and it won't make me feel better long term. Instead, I politely decline to discuss personal details and redirect the conversation back to my creative process and what drives my songwriting. The journalist looks disappointed but accepts my boundary and moves on. Walking out of that cafe, I feel genuine pride in my restraint. Staying focused on my work rather than my grievances feels like real growth. That weekend, I perform at a small club show in front of maybe 100 people. The intimate venue has sticky floors and dim lighting, but the crowd seems engaged. Halfway through my set, a drunk guy near the back starts yelling comments about my ex-husband and whether I'm actually good enough without the revenge story to prop me up. The room goes awkward and silent. Everyone watches to see how I'll react. I could ignore him or have security remove him, but instead I respond with humor that catches him off guard. I make a joke about how he's clearly had enough drinks to be my music critic and suggest he save his reviews for tomorrow when he's sober. A few people laugh and the tension breaks. Then I reset the room's energy by launching into my next song without giving him space to respond. The moment tests my composure, but I handle it with the kind of leadership I'm still learning. After the show, several people tell me they respected how I managed that situation. The drunk guy stumbles out during the encore without causing more problems. 3 days before my next scheduled performance, I wake up with a severely sore throat that makes swallowing painful. Panic hits immediately as I imagine vocal damage that could derail everything I've built. My first instinct is to push through and hope it gets better by showtime. But then I remember Isabel's warnings about permanent damage from performing while sick. I text her describing my symptoms and she calls me within 10 minutes. She tells me to rest completely, drink warm liquids, and absolutely do not attempt to rehearse or perform until she clears me. The idea of rescheduling and disappointing ticket holders makes me feel terrible. But Isabel reminds me that one canceled show is better than months of recovery from vocal cord damage. I spend the afternoon contacting the venue and working out a reschedule date. Most fans are understanding when I explain the health situation. A few complain on social media, but the majority appreciate my honesty. The preventive care feels responsible, even though I hate letting people down. 2 weeks later, I pilot a mentorship afternoon for aspiring singers and actors at a small community center. I cap attendance at 12 people to keep it manageable and affordable. The group includes teenagers trying to break into the industry and adults pursuing delayed dreams. I share what I've learned about the business side of entertainment, vocal health, dealing with rejection, and building sustainable careers. Answering their questions and offering practical advice shifts my focus completely away from my own struggles. One young woman asks how I kept going after my family told me I wasn't good enough. I tell her honestly about the years I gave up and how I eventually found my way back. Helping these people navigate their own paths feels surprisingly healing. The afternoon reminds me why I became a talent scout in the first place. I leave feeling energized rather than drained. The bounded service work gives me purpose beyond my own career advancement. The final mediation session arrives on a gray Tuesday morning. Autumn has all the paperwork ready for signatures, including a no-contact clause that limits Duncan and me to necessary logistics only. We sit across from each other in uncomfortable silence while she walks through each document one more time. Duncan looks tired and smaller somehow than I remember. I feel both nervous and ready for this closure. We initial documents without speaking directly to each other. The whole process takes maybe 20 minutes. When we stand to leave, Duncan hesitates like he wants to say something, but I keep my eyes on Autumn and follow her lead toward the door. Walking out of that office building, I feel physically lighter than I have in months. The weight of ongoing conflict just lifted. I sit in my car for a few minutes before driving away, letting myself process that this chapter is actually closed. That evening, Nicholas comes over to my apartment and we have an honest conversation about what dating openly looks like for us moving forward. The uncertainty about balancing personal and professional life has been weighing on both of us for weeks. We sit on my couch with tea and talk through the complications. I tell him I want to be with him, but I need our careers completely separate from now on. He agrees that mixing business and romance created problems we're still cleaning up. We commit to keeping our relationship private but real, with clear boundaries about not letting it influence professional decisions. Neither of us wants to hide what we have, but we also don't want our personal life to become part of my public narrative. The conversation feels grounded and mature. We agree that our relationship works best when it's not complicated by business considerations. By the end of the night, we both feel more secure about moving forward together. The next morning, I wake up to an email from an independent distributor offering a deal for my music. The advance is modest, maybe enough to cover 3 months of expenses, but the revenue splits look fair and sustainable. I immediately forward the offer to both Caspian and Dwayne instead of trying to evaluate it alone. We schedule a call for that afternoon to review every detail. Caspian points out clauses about creative control that I would have missed. Dwayne raises questions about distribution rights and streaming percentages. The collaborative approach helps me see aspects of the deal I wouldn't have considered on my own. Having their input makes me feel supported rather than isolated. We identify a few points to negotiate, but overall the offer seems solid. I feel grateful that I've built a team I can trust with these decisions. 2 days later, Delilah and I finally sit down to resolve the commission dispute that's been hanging over everything. I bring my lawyer's notes and she brings her agency's financial records. We spend an hour going through the timeline of Nicholas's early career and which resources came from where. The conversation starts tense but gradually shifts toward problem-solving rather than accusations. We agree on a clear 18-month tail for commissions with written audit rights that protect both parties. Delilah admits her agency's cash flow problems, and I acknowledge that she did invest resources in Nicholas's initial development. We find middle ground that feels fair without either of us getting everything we wanted. By the end of the meeting, we're both relieved to have reached a solution. I leave her office feeling like we handled this as professionals who respect each other despite our disagreements. The resolution doesn't erase the tension, but it closes the dispute without burning bridges or compromising my integrity. 3 weeks later, I walk into the courthouse carrying a folder with all the final paperwork for the divorce. The waiting room has hard plastic chairs and fluorescent lights that make everything look washed out and tired. Autumn meets me there with her briefcase, and we go over the documents one last time before the clerk calls us in. Duncan sits on the opposite side of the room, and we don't make eye contact. The whole process takes maybe 15 minutes. The clerk walks us through each page, explaining what we're signing, and I initial box after box. My hand moves automatically across the paper, signing my name next to Duncan's signature that's already there. When the clerk stamps the final page and tells us we're done, I feel absolutely nothing. I shake Autumn's hand, thank her for everything, and walk straight to my car without looking back. Once I'm alone in the driver's seat, I start crying. Not the angry tears from months ago, but something deeper and sadder. I cry for the 22-year-old version of me who thought this marriage would work. I cry for all the dinners where I pretended his comments didn't hurt. I cry for the years I spent making myself smaller to fit into his idea of who I should be. The grief feels real and heavy, even though I wanted this outcome. After 20 minutes, the tears stop, and I just sit there staring at the courthouse building. Then I get out of the car and start walking. There's a small park 2 blocks away, and I head there without planning to. The walk feels good. My legs move and the cool air hits my face, and slowly I notice this weird lightness spreading through my chest. It's like I've been carrying something heavy for so long that I forgot it was there, and now suddenly it's gone. I sit on a bench for a while watching people walk their dogs and kids play on the swings. Everything looks normal and ordinary, and somehow that makes me feel better. I'm not drowning anymore. I'm just here, sitting in a park, officially divorced, and somehow that feels okay. The next morning, I wake up to an email from Autumn forwarding a message from Duncan. He's asking her to pass along that he's started seeing a counselor and has requested a transfer to a different team at his company. The message is short and factual, no emotional appeals or requests to talk. My first reaction is suspicion. Is this genuine, or is he trying to look good for some reason? Is this about actually changing or just damage control for his reputation? I read the message 3 times looking for hidden meanings or manipulation. But then I stop myself. His choices aren't my problem anymore. Whether he's being real or strategic doesn't matter because I don't have to figure it out. I type a brief response to Autumn saying I acknowledge the message and wish him well from a distance. The words feel stiff and formal, but that's appropriate. I'm not his wife anymore. I'm not his friend. I'm just someone who used to know him, and cautious respect is all I owe him now. I hit send and close my laptop. Whatever Duncan does with his life going forward is his business, not mine. 2 weeks later, I stand backstage at a venue in a city 3 hours from home, getting ready for the first date of my regional tour. The promoter told me they sold 300 tickets, which feels both exciting and terrifying. That's 300 people who paid money to hear me perform. The show goes well. My voice holds steady through the whole set, and the crowd responds to every song. During the break between my set and the encore, I walk past the merchandise table and notice people crowding around it. By the end of the night, the venue manager tells me we ran completely out of t-shirts. I feel genuinely proud of the turnout. 300 tickets isn't a stadium show, but it's real and sustainable. I make a note to order more merchandise for the next shows and adjust the inventory based on what actually sold instead of what I hoped would sell. The balanced response feels right. I'm not inflating this into something bigger than it is, but I'm also not dismissing it as not good enough. I'm learning to evaluate success realistically, to see what's actually happening instead of what I want to be happening, or what I'm afraid is happening. A week later, a journalist publishes a profile about my career in a mid-level music magazine. I read it 3 times. The article covers my journey from talent scout to performer, including the whole story with Nicholas. But it doesn't shy away from the complicated parts. The journalist asks direct questions about the ethics of dating someone who used to be my client. She discusses the commission dispute with Delilah and how that created tension in the industry. She quotes anonymous sources who questioned whether I handled everything appropriately. My first reaction is defensiveness. I want to call the journalist and argue with the framing. I want to explain all the context she's missing. But then I keep reading and realize she's not attacking me. She's just being honest about the messy reality of how things actually happened. She includes my course corrections, the decision to transfer Nicholas to another agent, the mediation with Delilah. She shows the full picture, mistakes and all. By the end of the article, I realize being seen fully, flaws included, actually feels more authentic than a puff piece that pretends everything was perfect. The nuanced coverage makes me more credible, not less. People can see I'm a real person trying to do the right thing, not some perfect success story. 3 shows into the tour, I'm backstage doing vocal warm-ups when the stage manager tells me someone's here to see me. I walk out and there's my younger sister standing awkwardly near the dressing room door. We haven't talked much since I left Duncan. She was one of the family members who used to make comments about my voice sounding like a dying animal. Seeing her here catches me completely off guard. She doesn't say anything at first, just steps forward and gives me a brief hug. The gesture feels stiff but genuine. We stand there for a few seconds and then she pulls back. The words that come out are simple and careful. She tells me the show was good. I tell her thanks for coming. We exchange a few more awkward sentences about how she heard about the tour and decided to drive out. Neither of us mentions the past or the years of criticism. Neither of us apologizes or explains. But something in her restraint feels significant. This is someone who used to echo our family's harsh judgments, and now she's here, quiet and respectful. I sense the possibility of tentative peace between us. Not forgiveness exactly, and definitely not forgetting, but maybe a small opening towards something different. Nicholas's streaming series premieres on a Thursday night, and the reviews start rolling in immediately. Critics praise his performance, the writing, the whole production. His phone blows up with congratulations messages, and I watch him grin at the screen while scrolling through them. We celebrate privately in my apartment with Chinese takeout and a bottle of champagne. Part of me wants to post about it, to share this moment publicly and let everyone see how far he's come. Part of him wants the same thing, to walk a red carpet together and show the world we're together. But we stick to our agreement. We keep our relationship private and our professional lives completely separate. The premiere happens without either of us attending together. His agent handles the public appearances and I stay home. The disciplined joy of celebrating privately feels more intimate than any red carpet could provide. We eat dumplings on my couch and watch the premiere episode together and laugh at the parts that work and critique the parts that don't. This feels real in a way that public performance never could. 2 weeks later, I wake up with a severely sore throat. At first, I think it's just a cold, but when I try to do my vocal warm-ups, the pain gets sharper. I call Isabel and describe what's happening. She tells me it sounds like vocal strain and that I need to rest completely. No singing, no talking unless absolutely necessary. But I have a show scheduled in 3 days. I spend the whole day hoping it'll get better, doing the exercises she recommends, drinking tea, resting. The next day it's worse. I make the call to cancel the show. The venue manager is understanding, but I still feel terrible. I issue full refunds to everyone who bought tickets and post an explanation on social media about the cancellation. Some fans complain in the comments about making plans and now having wasted time. Most people respond with support and tell me to take care of my health. The guilt of disappointing people sits heavy in my chest. But there's also relief that I'm learning to be responsible about my limitations, instead of pushing through and making things worse. Over the next month, Dwayne and I meet 4 times to finalize the track list for my EP. We've been debating song order for weeks. He thinks we should open with the upbeat track that showcases my range, I think we should open with the quieter, more emotional song that tells a story. We argue about which songs make the cut, and which ones get saved for later. We go back and forth on whether to include the duet with Nicholas, or save it for a different release. Finally, we lock in a decision. 6 songs, ordered in a way that builds momentum and tells a complete arc. Then we work out a realistic release timeline. Mixing will take 3 weeks. Mastering another week. Distribution setup and promotional planning another 2 weeks. We build in buffer time for unexpected delays. The concrete plan feels decisive after months of uncertainty. Having actual dates and deliverables transforms the abstract creative work into something tangible. I can see the path from here to putting music out into the world. The EP releases on a Tuesday morning, and I watch the numbers come in throughout the day. It doesn't break any records. It doesn't hit the top of any major charts. But it finds an audience. People who like my style, who connect with the lyrics, who appreciate the production. Music blogs write thoughtful reviews analyzing the themes and the vocal choices. A few playlist curators add songs to their rotation. By the end of the week, I have real data about sales and streams. I sit down with my budget spreadsheet and update everything based on actual performance instead of optimistic projections. The numbers show modest but sustainable success. I'm not getting rich, but I'm also not losing money. The grounded satisfaction I feel is different from the vindictive triumph I used to imagine. I'm not thinking about Duncan seeing my success or proving anyone wrong. I'm just looking at real results and feeling proud of the work itself. 6 months after the divorce, I'm performing at a mid-sized venue when I spot Duncan sitting in the back row. My stomach drops for a second, but I keep singing. He's not in the front row this time. Not recording on his phone, not trying to make himself part of the show. He's just there, sitting quietly, watching. I make it through the whole performance without letting his presence throw me off. During the final song, I glance toward the back, and our eyes meet for a brief second. I give him a small nod. He nods back. Nothing more. No drama, no confrontation, no grand moment. After the show ends, he leaves quietly with everyone else. I don't try to find him or talk to him. The tense moment passes into neutral closure. Standing backstage afterward, I realize something important. I don't need him to validate my success anymore. I don't need him to witness it or acknowledge it or regret how he treated me. His presence at the show doesn't make my performance more meaningful, and his absence wouldn't make it less meaningful. I'm doing this for myself now, not for him. The week after that performance, I sit down with Caspian in his office to map out what comes next. He pulls up a calendar on his laptop and we start blocking off time in realistic chunks. Limited touring to protect my voice means no more than 2 shows per week with mandatory rest days between them. We schedule dedicated writing time every Monday and Wednesday morning when my creative energy runs highest. The mentorship events get capped at 1 per month so I don't overextend myself trying to help everyone at once. Caspian types everything into a shared document while I watch the plan take shape on screen. The sustainable approach reflects lessons I learned the hard way about burnout and boundary setting. I feel ambitious about the future without the frantic desperation that used to drive me. We agree to revisit the plan in 3 months and adjust based on what actually works versus what looks good on paper. 2 days later, I log into my bank account and navigate to the bill pay section. The final invoice from my lawyer sits at $4,000 for all the mediation and paperwork filing. I click through the payment screens and watch the money transfer out of my checking account. The balance drops but doesn't bottom out like it would have 6 months ago. I open a new savings account right there on the website and transfer 3 months of living expenses into it. Rent, utilities, food, insurance, all calculated and set aside. The residual financial stress I've been carrying finally eases. I can breathe without constantly calculating whether I can afford basic necessities. The relief of financial stability, even modest stability, feels like a form of freedom I forgot existed. I close my laptop and sit in the quiet of my apartment, just feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Late one night, I can't sleep, so I pull out my journal and start writing about everything that's happened. The pen moves across the page, and I realize that success stings less when I'm not using it as proof against someone who hurt me. The shift from vindication to self-trust happened so gradually I barely noticed until now. I write about Duncan and the concert and realize I don't feel the same burning need to prove him wrong anymore. I'm building a career because I love the work, not because I need to show him I'm not talentless. The words fill 3 pages before I notice how much time has passed. I read back over what I wrote and see the pattern clearly for the first time. Every good thing that happened felt hollow when I was doing it to prove someone wrong. But now when I write a song or book a show, it feels real because I'm doing it for myself. I close the journal and set it on my nightstand, feeling lighter than I have in months. My hometown show gets scheduled at a small venue where I used to watch local bands before I moved away. The sound system glitches twice during my set, cutting out completely in the middle of a verse. I keep singing through it until the tech gets it working again. Later, I forget the lyrics to a new song I've only performed 3 times before. My mind goes blank, and I have to hum through a few bars while the words come back to me. The crowd stays warm and engaged throughout every mistake. They clap between songs and a few people sing along to the ones they know. The imperfect moments don't ruin the performance. They make it human and real. I leave the stage feeling content rather than critical. For once, I'm not picking apart every flat note or missed cue. I'm just grateful people showed up and stayed with me through the rough spots. The acceptance of myself as enough, flaws included, settles over me like a comfortable blanket. After the show, I grab my phone from the dressing room and pull up my messages. I type out a simple text to Nicholas. We're good. I hit send and watch the message deliver. Then I pack up my things and head home to my quiet apartment. The drive takes 20 minutes and I spend it thinking about new songs I want to write. Not songs about Duncan or revenge or proving anyone wrong, just songs about things I notice and feel and want to share. I park in my usual spot and climb the stairs to my door. Inside, I drop my bag on the couch and change into comfortable clothes. The grounded optimism I feel isn't about perfect happiness or complete victory. It's about building a life that's authentically mine. I brush my teeth and wash my face and climb into bed. My mind drifts through melody ideas and lyric fragments. I fall asleep thinking about music I haven't written yet, not about people I need to prove wrong. So yeah, that's where she ended up. Not perfect, but genuine, which honestly matters more. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Drop a like if you enjoyed this one, maybe leave a comment. I've got more stories coming soon. All right, see you next time. Peace.